Welcome to Living Outside the Matrix. My name is Nigel Howitt, and today on the show we're going to look at what we know about coronavirus, the facts of what we know, I should say, or the very near certainties and the very high likelihoods, and we're going to look at what we can actually do. So I'm not going to be indulging in any of the maybes and all of the other speculational stories. I think they're basically just a distraction. What do we know about coronavirus? We know that it's actually not that serious a disease to catch. It's comparable to having the flu. Yes, some people die of it, and that's unfortunate, but the death rate is about 1% by current estimates, and it's mainly elderly and people with an already compromised immune system that seem to fall prey to it. So we have to acknowledge that this is not a high-risk, scary disease. It's not like the Black Death or the plague sweeping across Europe a few hundred years ago. So we know that there's nothing to fear really in coronavirus in terms of our health, unless we're in one of these high-risk categories where then we'll have to take some extra measures. We also know that serious economic repercussions are very likely, and that shortages will result. There could easily be restrictions, or more and more restrictions placed on travel and on trade with a virus that can travel by air and on touch. Clearly, even things like using the currency are dangerous. So handling goods and transporting and exporting goods is obviously something that could be restricted, with a huge repercussion in terms of trade and economic slowdown, even collapse potentially. So we can see that emptying shelves in shops could be just one of the many results of this pandemic, this state of emergency, sometime down the route. So we also know from the rest of our background knowledge from this outside the matrix perspective, we know that there are many factions within the establishment that would stand to benefit from this whole pandemic, this whole lockdown, the whole economic consequences. And right from pharmaceutical companies potentially profiting from vaccines through to Wall Street Club and so forth, profiteering on shorting stocks as they fall, people on the inside buying up businesses and so forth, taking advantage of the economic mayhem that could ensue. And we also know that governments would love to put in more measures that can control the population. So there are a lot of things that we can reasonably be sure about. We know that legislation is in place already. We know that the government has legislation and the powers to prevent movement and all of these things, make gatherings illegal. I think that's just happening now in the UK. But the implication, if not the tiny specifics, is that our freedom is going to be taken away from us. We can be reasonably sure of that. You may also have heard that 5G has been associated, or its activation, its recent activation has been associated with some of the outbreaks of coronavirus. We must remind ourselves that we know for a fact that electromagnetic fields, EMFs, including 5G, your phone use and Wi-Fi, etc., are undermining to the human immune system. We know that for a fact, and they are far more serious a threat to your health than the coronavirus ever could be, and that's demonstrably provable. So let's move on to what we can actually do. So the nature of the threat is not necessarily to our health, although there's a lot that we can do to bolster our immune system. The threat is more perhaps to our finances, our freedom, and our well-being in the short term, in case we have to incur any times of shortage. So I think the first thing we have to do is focus on educating ourselves. As always, we must be determined to find out, keep an ear to the ground, and not believe the first thing that we hear. So keeping ourselves informed is really important, and this is particularly a good time to get informed on how to be healthy, how to boost your immune system. And we'll cover just a few points in a minute, but that's probably the most important thing to begin educating yourself on. It's a great time to take an extra interest in optimizing your health and well-being and strengthening your immune system. whatever you might be told about it not being necessary to stock up on supplies and perhaps do some extra shopping, I personally don't agree with that at all. I think it's always a good idea to have large stocks of things in that you need and use regularly. And I also think that in the greater context of our lives today, in times of uncertainty, it's a fantastic time to always have a well-stocked supply of what you need, food and essentials, for as many months as you can arrange that. So that's something that you might want to look into doing. And then secondly, as I said, I would try to educate yourself on health issues such as nutritional ketosis. This is the ability of your body to switch from burning sugar, which it does for most people most of the time because of our modern Western diet, switches it into a fat burning mode where the body suddenly has access to its full fat reserves. It's adapted to that different fuel source, and it has the effect, it does several marvelous things to the body, but the immune system is demonstrably upgraded. Your thinking gets clearer, and there are numerous benefits to being in nutritional ketosis, and well worth learning about that. It's also worth learning about fasting and how a short fast of 5 days to 7 days can really kickstart ketosis. So that's something that I think it's well worth looking into. It's also worth looking into the negative effects of electromagnetic fields. As we talked about earlier on, we know that they're harmful, but it's a really good idea to learn about that and learn about 5G, because if you can do nothing else, you want to get yourself into an EMF-free zone at night when you sleep. So this leads us into another really important health tip for boosting your immune system or getting your immune system fully functional, is to get good sleep. Get good 7 or 8 hours of sleep every night in a cool, fully dark environment where you're not disturbed, and preferably make that little cocoon of quietness in an EMF-free zone. That's so important because your body rebuilds, repairs, and rejuvenates itself during those deep sleep hours when you're asleep. So it's really important to be EMF-free. In fact, EMFs can hamper your body's ability to even get into the deep sleep state. So focus on getting good sleep. I also recommend using a product called Restore. It's a gut supplement which is heals leaky gut and massively boosts your immune system's communication ability. So I recommend using that. And also I would recommend supplementing it with vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is really important for your immune system's proper functionality, and most people are deficient in it due to the time of year and other reasons. So I definitely supplement on that at this time to give your immune system the full boost that it could. I'd also, if you're washing your hands as often as you're advised to, I'd use ordinary simple soap, warm water. I wouldn't reach for the sanitizers and kinds of things that have BPA in them. That can be really counterproductive to your health. You keep wiping your hands with stuff with BPA on it, touching your mouth, perhaps eating with your fingers, and that's an endocrine disruptor. So I wouldn't do that. I'd also bear in mind that antibiotics kill bacteria, of course, but they reduce the efficacy of our immune system. They're an immune system blow, basically. So hesitate with those, but again, you have to take that in whatever context you're in, as appropriate. Remember that your gut is the foundation of your health, essentially. The other thing I really want to talk about and let you know about, I should say, is something called chlorine dioxide, sometimes known as MMS. It's a safe and easy to use household remedy, if you like. It's rubbished as being bleach on the internet and by the establishment, but it's an effective and powerful oxidizing agent, and your immune system and your body can cope with it because our immune system functions using oxidation and reduction, and it's very able to cope with it. In the small doses that it is taken, it's very effective at killing pathogens and leaving the immune system unharmed. In fact, it helps the immune system. So look into that, research into it. There are various protocols that you can take, and I recommend going to Jim Humble's website. I think he's got a plan there of what to do if you get coronavirus and what to do as a prevention and so forth. You might also want to consider hydrogen peroxide, which is a great surface cleaner. If you mix that with apple cider vinegar, It makes a great antibacterial, antimicrobial, as does colloidal silver. That's another one to have in the family medicine cabinet. The next can-do category is really protecting your assets. We know that economic repercussions are likely and dominoes could fall. So this just says to us, be aware, or it should say to us, be aware of your finances and your assets. Where are they? What's your plan? Have you got money in the bank, in stocks and shares, in precious metals, in cryptocurrencies? Where are your assets parked? And this is a time to think about potentially moving them. I would take my money out of the bank personally. It's not advice, but that's what I would do, and I wouldn't necessarily have it in stocks and shares, unless of course you've got inside connections. But just be aware of the potential need for cash in the short term. You know, when there's a crisis and times of societal breakdown, cash can be king in the short term. Maybe even cryptos sometime after that. Who knows? Precious metals. It's up to you to make a plan, but do make one. And the other thing to be aware of is bracing ourselves for the inevitable political changes, and most seriously, our losses of freedom, potential travel and movement restrictions under the guise of a very valid and justified pretext, of course. It's not going to seem outlandish or controversial, and on the contrary, anyone who flouts it will be seen as an enemy. But perhaps most serious is the compulsory or mandatory vaccination. I don't think that's a good idea for a whole load of reasons to do with the efficacy of vaccination as a means of conferring immunity, and also because of the possibility of microchipping occurring without the knowledge or awareness of the recipient of the vaccine dose. So these are things that we need to be concerned about. Perhaps the last thing we can do is keep the conversation going. Talk to friends, relatives, and associates, whoever may listen. As always, have a rational conversation, exchange ideas, and look for the rational argument behind what you hear. Check things up, of course. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for listening. I do hope this has helped. The main point is that I don't think we really need to be too concerned. It's a good idea to take care of our health. MMS can help us with that. So be safe, be well, and thanks for listening, and join us again for another episode of Living Outside the Matrix.
Be the change you want to see. Be the change you want to see.